So a few months ago, I made a video about Superpowers, a Claude Code plugin that, in my opinion, does a better job of planning features than the built-in plan mode. But now the team have released Ultraplan, which works by moving the plan from the CLI to Claude Code on the web, which will clone your repo in a cloud environment and write a detailed plan for you to implement in the cloud or back on your machine, which is all very cool. So hit subscribe and let's see if I think this new way of planning is better than using Superpowers and better than playing Pokemon. Annoyingly, at the time of recording this video, the Claude team have just released Claude Routines, and they've also redesigned the Claude Code desktop app. Anthropic, why do you move so fast? Anyway, this video is about the Ultraplan feature, so let's get straight into it. So the focus of this demo is to write a plan for this product, which is a CLI tool I'm working on that does film emulation. I'll add a link to it in the description if you're interested. But this plan is to focus on building a release pipeline. I'll start with using the new Ultraplan feature and then compare the plan. So in order to use Ultraplan, you need to have at least this version of Claude Code, and you can use it with the /Ultraplan command, or you can just write Ultraplan, which will give it this nice rainbow effect, similar to UltraThink. Then I'm going to paste in a prompt to build the release pipeline. I've also told it not to use the Superpowers skill so that it can focus on just using the Claude Ultraplan feature. But before I hit enter, let's take a look at my usage percentage, which you can see is set to 0 before Claude has done any planning. So now if I hit enter, it asks me if I want to run the interactive plan on the web, which I'm going to say yes to. And it looks like the Ultraplan creation failed at about 4% usage. So I'm going to run the exact same prompt in debug mode, which has now given me this link to view it in the browser. But I'm actually going to view it in the newly redesigned Claude Code for Mac, and I'm going to close this sidebar, and we can see that it first set up a cloud container and then cloned the repo. I forgot to mention, to use Ultraplan, your project repo needs to be on GitHub since it creates a cloud session and needs to clone the repo to understand the code. So once that's done, it starts Claude Code in the cloud, runs the bash tool to read the context of the repo, and then runs a few other commands. And here it asks a few questions about the plan, and after about 2 or 3 minutes, I get a notification in the terminal telling me Ultraplan has finished and it's ready for review. So here is the plan. I'm actually going to zoom out a bit to make it easier to read and extend this sidebar before zooming in a tiny bit more. So first of all, it's told me the repo is empty with no commits and no code, which is not true. The repo is definitely not empty. So it's got the shape of the change, which looks good. It's got the build scripts and a minimal CLI that the pipeline can use for a smoke test. This looks very comprehensive, and the fact that it did it in about 2 to 3 minutes makes me think that there were some sub-agents that were being used to get it done quickly. But from here, I can select parts of the text and add a comment if I wanted to. Like over here, I can ask it, what repo are you referring to, and do you have access to this? And from here, Claude can revise the plan. But before I go ahead and do that, let's take a look at my new token percentage, which has gone from 4% because of the debugging issue all the way to 19. So 15% of my tokens were used to come up with this plan, which isn't too bad, I guess. Let's go ahead and revise this plan. And now it clones the correct repo. I don't know why it didn't do that the first time. So about a minute later, Claude has proposed a new plan. And if we open that out over here, we can see it does a much better job of understanding what the project contains, and has created a flow diagram, has a list of the exact files to modify, and improves the GitHub action for releases. Note, this whole process of updating the plan moved it from 19 to 37% used, meaning this whole plan used around 33% of my usage, which is a lot for a plan. Now from here, I'm going to accept the plan, which begins to execute the plan remotely. Now I'm sure there's a way for me to execute it in the CLI instead of executing it in the cloud, but that option wasn't really obvious. And after about 5 minutes, it's finished the implementation, but because there are no GitHub credentials in this environment, I have to manually create a new branch and create a PR, which isn't too bad. And I'm sure if I added to GitHub credentials, if I had a private repo, it'll be able to pull it and add it to the sandbox for creating a plan. But because the scope of this demo was just to review the plan, we're going to end it here and not look too deep into the implementation. Let's now look at the same plan done with Superpowers. Now, in order to save time, I've gone ahead and executed this already inside Claude Code, so we could just run through it. And what I like about Superpowers compared to Ultraplan is the amount of questions it asks. The Ultraplan asked 3 questions, but we can see here with Superpowers, we get 6 questions, so double the amount, and I believe from this, it gives a more thorough plan. And because this is running locally, it doesn't have to clone my repo because it has access to the code directly. From here, it drafted out the plan and gave me the CI flow and outlines how everything will work. Now, Superpowers actually has two planning phases: the design plan that captures the problem and the requirements, and the implementation plan, which breaks down the design into bite-sized chunks. So here is the final implementation plan from Superpowers, which has a goal, architecture, and tech stack, which I really like, the file structure for the release pipeline, and the list of tasks that needs to be implemented, including source code, which is similar to what Ultrapan provided, but Ultraplan didn't provide test cases, which is what Superpowers does really well. It gets the model to write tests first, then write the implementation. So here we can see the test for the versioning, then you run the test to see if it fails, before actually implementing the version flag. This process happens all the way down for every single task. And the whole plan is about 833 lines, compared to the plan from Ultraplan, which is about 195. One thing to note is that the whole session for creating the Superpowers design and implementation plan took up about 75.1k tokens. So that's 57 for the messaging and 1.9 for the skills, which is what Superpowers mainly uses. So if you believe the Pro 5-hour limit is about 44,000 tokens, then creating a Superpowers plan uses much more. Although I'm not convinced it's actually 44,000 tokens, and this is excluding prompt caching, which does a lot to reuse existing tokens. Now, you may get the impression from that demo that I prefer using Superpowers than using Ultraplan to plan a feature, and you're not wrong there. But there is a time and place for Ultraplan. For example, if I know I'm going to be away from my machine for a long period of time, say I'm commuting or I'm traveling on a plane or an airport or wherever, I may want to start a feature on my laptop, close it, turn it off, and continue it on my phone, tablet, wherever, and benefit from my code being in the cloud and creating PRs as long as I've installed the Claude app on my repo, which I forgot to do for this demo. Whoops. But if I do choose to work locally, which I'm doing 90% of the time, then I'll probably use Superpowers because all my code is there locally, my skills, my MCP tools, everything, and I can get a more thorough plan. Now, this isn't to say a more thorough plan means a better execution. It's just the way I prefer working because I can have a true dialogue with the model when I'm planning things out. Now, currently, the Ultraplan feature is only available through the Claude Code CLI, so for the terminal, and works with a Pro or Max subscription since it has the Claude Code for Web link. But maybe in the future, they'll roll it out to different subscription plans and different platforms. So maybe you could kick off an Ultraplan session from Claude Code Web itself.